The news now on BBC One with Chris Lowe.
A historic decision for Sinn Féin. It votes to support the police in Northern Ireland. A big majority say yes, boosting hopes for the return of power sharing. After the row about reality show racism, the Bollywood actress Shilpa Shetty wins Big Brother. The police lose track of more than 300 sex offenders, the latest crisis to hit the Home Office. And Richard Hammond's high-speed crash. The first pictures are released. Hello, good evening to you. In a move described as historic by Downing Street, Sinn Féin has voted overwhelmingly to cooperate with the police in Northern Ireland, ending its long boycott. The outcome is seen as essential for the Democratic Unionists to enter into power sharing with Republicans. From Dublin, Dennis Murray reports.
Not everyone in the hall voted in favour, but the result was overwhelming just the same. Sinn Féin taking the decision, which Gerry Adams said was historic. The party leadership was jubilant. This opens the way for the party to be back in a power-sharing devolved administration. That leadership had argued that to back policing was not a betrayal of Republican principle. Instead, it fitted right into their strategy.
We who assembled here and thousands like us believe that the best way to achieve this is to take control of our own destiny. This means persuading the British government to face up to its responsibilities. And that means the British government leaving Ireland.
Some Irish Republicans say this policy is betrayal. Traitor, the hecklers shouted at the start of the day, but most who are opposed have left Sinn Féin. Not all, though. There were some dissident voices within.
How can we allow ourselves to be consumed wholly by the while our 6 counties are still watched over by MI5?
The Sinn Féin leadership was fairly certain it was going to carry this vote. It's got its wish, and though it was predicted, it's still a momentous one. Less than 2 years ago, Republicans were fighting police in Belfast, a despised enemy they saw as the armed face of British oppression. Now Sinn Féin's not only backing policing, they'll be joining local police partnerships and joining the main police board. An astonishing change.
And we can talk to Dennis in Dublin now. Dennis, the key question, will this be enough for the Democratic Unionists?
Well, the Democratic Unionist Party already has a statement out this evening in which leader Ian Paisley says that the Sinn Féin party have to show true and visible support for policing. That's his phrase, and you can really sub that down to one word, which is delivery, delivery, delivery. They want to see Sinn Féin pardon me, showing not just the fact that they can take a vote here, but to show publicly and really that they are backing policing, and not just in terms of joining district policing partnerships and the policing board, but in terms of actually telling the police about crime. Because for years there was an ethic in the Republican community that talking to the police was an act of betrayal. You were an informer. So the DUP want to see it taken right down as far as that level. But it's the last day of the Assembly for the time being at Stormont tomorrow, and there should be an election after that to the Assembly.
Okay, Dennis, thanks very much indeed. The police have lost track of more than 300 sex offenders, some of them paedophiles. They used a loophole in the law to give misleading details about where they're living. And tonight there was more bad news for the Home Office. The Police Federation said it warned officials about the problem 3 years ago. Here's Terry Stiasny.
This government website is enlisting the public's help to find some of the most wanted sex offenders who can't currently be traced. Some have been spotted, but others, like Colin Taylor, are still missing. According to the Child Protection website, he could be abroad or still in this country. Families in Newcastle, where he was last seen, are worried that the sex offenders register isn't working.
Get away with goodness knows what because they're very, very clever. And if they're wandering around this area, this is dreadful.
I think it should be a daily basis, should be checked on constantly, because obviously they've done it in the past, and yes, some of them may change, but on the other hand, they have already committed, you know.
Sex offenders have always been around, and we've never known where they are, so I think looking after your children is, keeping an eye on them is always paramount anyway.
These are figures that are going to make even more unwelcome reading here at the Home Office. The News of the World discovered that the whereabouts of 322 sex offenders, including rapists and paedophiles, are unknown. In London, the Metropolitan Police has lost track of 88 offenders, and it's a problem across the country. The West Midlands Police, for example, can't find 25 people. The Home Office should have been aware of this problem, according to both police officers and the opposition.
We warned the government about 3 years ago when they were looking at reviewing the sex offenders register that some of the addresses that people were giving were sometimes a postcode, sometimes it was a park bench. I think in the papers today it's reported about the Woods was an address.
There's now a well-known loophole, basically, that the sex offender can say, I live in this ward, or I live near this leisure centre, or whatever. Much, much looser for them than for almost anybody else. Now, frankly, that should have been got a grip of right then and there, because it may be a small fraction, but 300 potential sex offences is not a small thing. It's something a Home Secretary should take very seriously.
It's been another week of bad news for the Home Secretary, John Reid. The government argues that in the vast majority of cases, though, the system does work and the Home Office is improving.
I'm not saying there'll be big problems in the Home Office, but let's be clear, some of these things like foreign prisoners, or these offences that have been committed abroad by British people and then returned back home, the reason we're dealing with these now is that for the first time there is a process in place to deal with them.
Since you've been on probation, have you gone anywhere to access any person under the age of 16?
The government now wants to try using lie detector tests for sex offenders to see if they're likely to re-offend, and perhaps also to show that the Home Office is in control of its agenda. Terry Stiastny, BBC News, Westminster.
The Bollywood star Shilpa Shetty has won Celebrity Big Brother. Her treatment at the hands of some of her fellow contestants led to accusations of racism and international condemnation. She said appearing in the show had been a roller coaster experience. David Sillito reports.
The winner of Celebrity Big Brother 2007 is Shilpa.
Shilpa Shetty, Bollywood actress and now winner of Celebrity Big Brother. She looked amazed that she'd won. She looked stunned when she found out why.
Those three young women are witches with a capital B.
Claims that she'd been racially bullied by some of the housemates made headline news, brought tens of thousands of complaints, protests in India, questions in Parliament, and a police investigation.
I just want to, forget things. I just want to put one thing, address that things happen and people make mistakes and we're all human beings and we're all fallible. And I know one thing for sure, Jade really didn't mean to be racist.
Why do they hate me? Why am I detested?
The thing that aggravates me with Shilpa, she fingers your food.
This chicken is fine.
Do they do that in India, eat with the hands?
Indeed, tonight was the first time that she'd seen most of the incidents that had so upset some viewers.
You did not only pick Oxo cubes off the shopping list, so you're a liar. Not only are you fake, you're a liar.
Shilpa has certainly acquired an army of fans, but the debate here has been whether or not it's been racial bullying or just bullying.
I do think that Shilpa has been bullied.
Racial bullying?
Yes, I would say that it is racial bullying. I think it's bullying, but I don't think it's racial.
I think it's just girls being bitchy myself.
It was definitely bullying on Jade's part, without a doubt. Racial, I'm not sure.
For Shilpa Shetty, it's a welcome and almost certainly very lucrative personal victory. But for many viewers, this has been all about race and what is and isn't acceptable in modern Britain. David Sillito, BBC News.
The Top Gear presenter Richard Hammond is back on our screens. He's been talking about his 288-mile-an-hour crash last year with the first moving pictures of the accident. Matt Prodger reports.
I didn't think I'd ever be saying this at one point. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Richard Hammond!
Back to a hero's welcome and unseen footage from the episode which nearly killed him.
I've got 10,000 horsepower and possibly the biggest accident you've ever seen in your life.
He made 2 successful runs before a third and final one.
It was all over quite quickly, so do it again in slow motion. You can see the moment when the tyre goes. It's still doing 288 miles an hour here, but then it's off. It's away. I think it's about 0.4 of a second, really, from the tyre blowing to it all going wrong. Then when it digs in on the grass, the car rolls. It's still doing 230 when it's upside down on the grass. So here now it's still doing 230 miles an hour when it's upside down. Then it flips a bit, and then it settles down, and the roll bar digs into the ground along with my head, and that stops it very quickly.
Investigators have yet to give their verdict on the safety precautions taken by the programme.
It doesn't necessarily follow that simply because there was a crash that reasonable measures weren't being taken, but it could be, if they find gaps, that there could indeed be a prosecution.
Top Gear's presenters have promised to push the boundaries in the new series. Perhaps not quite this far. Matt Prodger, BBC News.
The Iraqi authorities say around 250 militants have been killed in a day of fighting involving both Iraqi and US forces near the city of Najaf. The US military has confirmed that an American helicopter went down during the battle. 2 soldiers on board were killed. Muslims who are too afraid to report suspected terrorist activities to the police are being urged to speak to third parties such as mosque leaders instead. The call comes from the Metropolitan Black Police Association. Barney Chowdhury has this exclusive report.
In the fight against terror and radicalisation, the police say they need intelligence from the Muslim communities. The only problem is that some simply don't trust them. Many Muslims say they feel alienated and marginalised.
So what the Metropolitan Black Police Association want is for Muslims to report anything suspicious to a third party. A mosque, for example, or a local community centre. And they say no one needs to know the identity of the informant.
Some in the communities are concerned they're being asked to inform on family, friends and neighbours and are reluctant to get involved.
This is not about grassing on your neighbours. This is about providing good quality information and intelligence which would help the police to sort out the issue of radicalisation and terrorism.
But some Muslims are concerned that high-profile raids like Forest Gate have relied on flawed intelligence. They're worried that neither the police nor communities know what they're looking for.
Radicalisation, what does that mean? Growing a beard, praying 5 times a day, feeling passionately about issues of Palestine or foreign policy. If something comes to me, as with the vast majority of Muslims in this country and non-Muslims, there's an issue of someone who wants to blow up the train, so straight away they pick up the phone, dial 999. Forget about third-party reporting. This is an issue of urgency, and I'm sure they wouldn't hesitate in calling the police.
Chief police officers and most Muslim groups are united in wanting to prevent another terrorist attack in Britain. But their biggest hurdle will be getting the communities to give them reliable intelligence. Barney Chowdhury, BBC News.
Now, with news of the FA Cup 4th round and all the rest of the day's sport, here's Mary Rhodes.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. Good evening. Well, no major surprises in the FA Cup today, but Arsenal will have to travel to Bolton for a replay after the two sides drew 1-1 at the Emirates Stadium. West Bromwich Albion got the better of the Black Country derby, beating Wolves 3-0. Man City are through to the 5th round following a 3-1 win over Southampton, and Chelsea were comfortable 3-0 winners over Nottingham Forest. Here's Ollie Foster.
Andrei Shevchenko has scored 3 goals in 2 games now. That 2 were against Wycombe in the League Cup and 1 today against a hapless Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup. Won't yet convince his manager that he's worth £30 million. It was a scrappy goal as well that took a big deflection. This was a stroll for Chelsea, with 2 more goals by half-time. The best of them a Didier Drogba free kick. Jose Mourinho likes him. He did give Shevchenko a full game, which doesn't happen often. He wasn't rewarded with any more goals, but strangely, this seemed to cheer him up. The sight of Shevchenko hacked down. The ability to see the funny side may serve him well with tougher matches than this to come. Arsenal had it much harder. Bolton knocked them out of the cup at the same stage exactly a year ago. Kevin Nolan put them on the way to a repeat. But a replay was the best they could manage as Kolo Touré headed the equaliser to maintain Arsenal's unbeaten home record. Manchester City were a goal down at home to Southampton, but fought back to lead 2-1 by the break. Joey Barton with their second. They won 3-1 in the end. There was an all-championship tie at Molineux. A derby as well, but a very one-sided one as West Bromwich Albion comfortably beat Wolves 3-0. Diamanti Kamara's solo special, the best of the goals that secured bragging rights and a place in the 5th round. Ollie Foster, BBC News.
And the draw for the 5th round is live on BBC Two tomorrow at 1:30. It's also on BBC Radio 5 Live. Now, Celtic are continuing to run their one-horse race in the Bank of Scotland Premier League. They're 19 points clear at the top of the table after beating Inverness Caledonian Thistle 2-1. The winner came in injury time from the man who has to have the longest name in British football, Jan Vannegaard of Hesselink. But his elaborate celebrations in the crowd led to a second yellow card and he was sent off. Roger Federer has taken his Grand Slam winning tally into double figures after successfully defending his Australian Open title. Federer beat the Chilean Fernando Gonzalez in straight sets in Melbourne, and the world number one didn't drop a set all tournament. Federer says he's aiming to win the Olympic gold medal in London in 2012. And finally, Saracens are up to 5th in Rugby Union's Guinness Premiership after beating London Irish 19-8. And that's all the sport from me for tonight. Chris.
Thanks very much. The news continues now on BBC News 24 with more on Shilpa Shetty's victory in Celebrity Big Brother with the former Big Brother contestant, Derek Lord. Now, let's get the latest on the weather with John Hammond.
Thanks, Chris. Well, for many of us it hasn't been a bad weekend. If you're lucky you saw some sunshine, but for most of us it was cloudy and dry. And tomorrow for most of us it will be cloudy and dry. There's not much going on weather-wise at the moment. At least that cloud cover is preventing temperatures from falling too low overnight. A few breaks, but in general no lower than around 2 or 3 degrees. Now, if you're lucky, you'll see some sunshine tomorrow, but there'll be a fair amount of cloud around too. And that cloud's got a mind of its own, so difficult to pinpoint who's going to see the sunshine. But through the afternoon, hopefully some brightness across the Midlands. A better chance of some longer sunny spells across northeast England, perhaps southeast Scotland as well. Further north and west, still a lot of cloud, but not as windy as it was today across Scotland, and most of the rain should have died away. Northern Ireland also dry, but still a fair amount of cloud around. Cloudy too across Wales. If you see some sunshine, you'll be doing well, but across southwest England, perhaps to the south of the moors, you might see some sunshine and shelter from a light northerly breeze. Temperatures around 9 or 10 degrees, a usable sort of day. And across other southern counties, if the sun comes out, well, it could almost feel like spring. So not a bad start to the working week. As we go into tomorrow night, a few subtle changes, perhaps a few more clear skies across England, make temperatures a little bit lower, and maybe the odd patch of fog across eastern areas a bit more widespread. But generally, again, no problems to start Tuesday, and southern areas will stay pretty dry as we go towards the middle of the week. Further north, after a dry start, a bit of a change come midweek, a spell of wet and windy weather here. That's it. Chris, back to you.
Thanks, John. The main news tonight, Sinn Féin has voted to support the police in Northern Ireland for the first time. That's the latest. There'll be news throughout the night over on BBC News 24. From us, good night.
Is there a God or not? Celebrities pondering the meaning of life. Next on BBC One.
Which one of you spiteful pair set up that website?
You think you're that clever, don't you? You can't even see through her. You made me!
There's a lot to learn this term.
I'm just going to stay at Holly's tonight.
Are you sure about this?
Yeah.
Waterloo Road continues. Thursday at 8 on BBC One.
Norah Jones in session for BBC One in half an hour, but first some important questions to answer.